Sailing. Intercept Nami and build a business empire. Chapter 46. You are getting more and more arrogant, but when are we going to go to the new world you mentioned? Zoro walked to Luo Chi's side and asked with a smile. What's up? It's been a while since I last met a strong opponent, so you feel itchy. Luo Chi patted his shoulder and said jokingly. Ah. You promised me that you would let me meet Hawkeye. Now I should be able to fight him, right? Zoro's eyes were full of expectation. Although his pursuit of the world's greatest swordsman has not diminished, as Rozaki has improved his three-color domineering. In the first half of the Grand Line, there are almost no people who can fight him and let him have a hearty fight. Zoro, I have good news for you. Hawkeye is almost in Water City. The one who spoke was Nico Robin. Among the scattered assassins, the ones who were responsible for intelligence gathering were under her charge. Hearing Robin's words, Zoro's eyes lit up, and the eagerness for a fight in his eyes was clearly visible. Hawkeye seems to be one of the 7 warlords of the sea, right? Wei Wei interrupted and asked. I remember Luo Chi mentioned before that Hawkeye's original bounty seemed to be very high. Nami poked her chin and recalled, but she couldn't remember it. It's not very high, it's very high, 3.59 billion. You must have been enjoying yourself at that time and didn't remember it. Nohigo poked Nami at the side and teased her with a curled lip. She blushed. On the other side, Khalifa, who was following silently at the end, listened to the conversation of several people. She was shocked. As a dignified Shichibukai, he knew exactly where the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce was. How terrible is the background of Khalifa? Under the heart net. Luo Chi knew everything in Khalifa's mind. Luo Chi's mouth corners were raised inexplicably. This is just the tip of the iceberg. You are so surprised. How can you do what a secretary should do in the future? Half an hour later. On the second floor of the manor. Luo Chi was lying quietly in the huge hot spring pool. Keiya and Makino knelt beside Luo Chi and massaged his shoulders. Khalifa sat on Rozaki, blushing as she patiently wiped the dirt off his body. Not far away. Nico Robin was wearing a facial mask, lying calmly by the pool with her eyes closed. Nami was swimming around in the pool. As for Nojiko, Vivi and Kalaman, they were enjoying this moment of leisure with a look of comfort. Around the bathing pool, Pola and Michita were skillfully preparing clean clothes and toiletries for Rozaki. Only Kanis and Laki, like when Kalaman and the others first got on board, were huddled in a corner nervously, their faces flushed. Rozaki naturally enjoyed all this. His mind was constantly calculating the latest information he had received. The new navigator of the Straw Hat Boy was bitten in the small garden. I don't know if it was fate or destiny, but I arrived at the Drum Island by chance. Hawkeye Mahawk, one of the 7 warlords of the sea, returned to the Grand Line after a small disturbance in the East China Sea. He walked faster than the Straw Hat Boys and his crew. It is expected that he will arrive at the Water City early tomorrow morning for a short rest. Doflamingo, who is also one of the 7 warlords of the sea, seems to have appeared in the Grand Line and is heading towards the Water City according to the latest intelligence feedback. As for Blackbeard Marshal Teach, this guy did not seem to go to the Magic Valley town after making a big fuss on the Drum Island, but has not appeared. Of course. There is also Fire Fist Ace, this guy has just arrived in Alabasta. Similarly, the information that he appeared in the Water City has also attracted the attention of the Navy. Aokiji has set out from Marineford with several warships and is heading towards the Water City. On several merchant ships in the Sabayati archipelago, countless reporters are also gathering here, and it is expected to arrive in about 7 days. In addition to these, what surprised Luo Chi the most was that the Empress, Boa Hancock, who was supposed to be active in hunting pirates in the New World, actually returned to the Grand Line and was also rushing here. Of course. In addition to the information sent back by the death squads he sent out. Just now, he confirmed a fact from Khalifa's thoughts. That is, Khalifa is only responsible for making friends with him temporarily, collecting as much information as possible about his preferences, personality, and strength, and it seems that there will be others who will take over the next action after her. This means that the world government is also paying special attention to the Water City. The 3 Shichibukai, the Admiral of the Navy headquarters, the intelligence officers of the higher institutions of the world government, and the reporters in Sabayati. Although there are no figures of the four emperors and the revolutionary army, it must be said that for now, it is enough for Luo Qi to make the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce famous in this world. Khalifa, are you interested in working for me? Opening his eyes, looking at Khalifa who was breathing slightly in front of him, Luo Qi asked with a smile. Mr. Luo Qi, you want me to betray CP9? The world government will not let me go. Khalifa replied with a trembling voice and a scent in her mouth. Really? Instantly switching the devil fruit ability to the Nika fruit, Khalifa exclaimed. With her eyes blurred and her teeth clenched, Khalifa snorted. Mr. Luo Qi, I finally understand why you are so attractive. Thank you for the compliment. With a grin, Luo Qi stopped talking and closed his eyes. The port of Water City. Zoro was holding a bottle of wine, stroking the three swords on his waist, waiting quietly. Ever since he learned the information about Hawkeye, he has been thinking about fighting Hawkeye all the time. All night long, Zoro didn't close his eyes. Until the sun rose, the early morning sunlight appeared on the sea level. A small black shadow gradually approached the port of Water City. Zoro suddenly narrowed his eyes. He could feel the aura of a strong man emanating from the black shadow, and it was the sharpness that belonged only to a swordsman. The black shadow was getting closer and closer. He didn't stand up until he could see the black shadow clearly. Jorakul Mahak, the world's #1 swordsman. Looking at Hawkeye, who was above all swordsmen and carried the supreme sword Black Blade Knight on his shoulder, Zoro felt his blood boiling in an instant. No nonsense. Zoro drew out his knife, looked at Hawkeye who had just landed on the island and said, Hawkeye, I want to challenge you. Turning around, his sharp eyes swept over Zoro, and Hawkeye asked calmly. Oh, are you the swordsman with 3 swords? I can sense your powerful aura. What's your name? Roronoa Zoro. You should be okay. I have been waiting for you for a long time, let's have a good fight, okay? Zoro took off the headscarf on his arm and slowly tied it on his head. Roronoa Zoro, what is your dream? He still did not draw his sword, but looked at Zoro and asked. The world's greatest swordsman. After pulling out the Wado Ikimonji and saying these words, Zoro bit them on his lips. In this case, I can only draw my sword. With his eyes fixed, Hawkeye drew out the black knife knight. At this moment, a familiar voice sounded in their ears. Ice Age. In an instant, the sea that was still surging against the coast turned into an endless ice surface. Then, Aokiji rode his bicycle slowly to the middle of the two people and said. If you want to fight, you can go on the ice, don't destroy the buildings of Water City. After saying that, without paying any attention to the expressions of the two people, he rang the bell and rode into the town of Water City. Hawkeye and Zoro looked at each other, and at the same time jumped onto the frozen sea of Aokiji. 3 swords style. Demon slash. With his hands holding the swords crossed, Zoro slashed at Hawkeye at high speed. Frowning, Hawkeye calmly swung his sword, and a huge sword energy came across, forcing Zoro to raise his sword and slash out 3 sword energies that should have been released when he got close. But the sword energy swung by Hawkeye's powerful slash, with unparalleled momentum, pushed Zoro back several meters before it was barely blocked. Roronoa Zoro. Is this what you are capable of? With a cold shout, Hawkeye unceremoniously swung out another slash, and the irresistible strong sword energy rushed straight to Zoro's face. He dodged sideways. When Zoro looked back, he found that there was a long and narrow gap on the endless ice surface, stretching for hundreds of meters. The world's greatest swordsman is so terrifying. Humph. As expected of the world's greatest swordsman, this powerful sword energy really makes people's blood boil. With a contemptuous smile, Zoro's fighting spirit became more and more intense. Just as he was about to attack again, he was interrupted by an untimely voice. Ha 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 ha. The world's greatest swordsman, Hawkeye. It's hard to imagine that someone would dare to come and challenge you. Ha 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 ha. Marshall D. Teach was wearing a black pirate suit, with 10 gold rings on his hands. His ferocious face and toothless mouth laughed out loud. Behind him, Badgers, Van Oka, Lafitte, and Poison Q, who was riding a dying horse, stared at Hawkeye and Zoro. Marshall D. Teach. I heard that you killed the captain of the 4th Division of the Whitebeard Pirates, yet you still dare to show up here so brazenly. Aren't you afraid of death? Waving the black knife, Hawkeye glanced at Blackbeard with disdain and snorted coldly. Tisk. Perhaps he felt that it was not appropriate for him to provoke Hawkeye at the moment. Blackbeard snorted awkwardly, then turned his head to look at Zoro. Boy, you seem to be quite strong. Are you interested in joining my pirate group? If you don't leave now, I'll chop you up. Sauron said in a more direct and unceremonious voice. Marshal D. He also knew Teach's intelligence. Zoro hated this guy who even attacked his own people. What's more, at this moment, he was still interrupting his duel. The smile on Blackbeard's face froze, and the embarrassment was evident. He turned around and led the others towards the water city, deliberately saying something to ease the embarrassment, but he stopped talking immediately after saying half of it. Froze the sea and almost froze me. Obviously, he realized who had this ability. The ice surface returned to calm again. Zoro stopped talking nonsense, holding the knife, and rushed towards Hawkeye again. Ding! 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 For a moment, the sound of sharp swords colliding rang out. Every attack could roll up large pieces of broken ice on the ground. Hawkeye calmly held the black knife and easily blocked Zoro's quick attacks again and again. Zoro also continued to play the advantages of his three swords and launched a fast and fierce attack. Finally, after the fierce attack, Zoro panted slightly and looked at Hawkeye, slowly closed his eyes, and opened them again. He began to compose a poem. 36 troubles in one life, 72 troubles in 2 lives, 108 troubles in 3 lives. 3 sword styles, secret technique, 108 troubles Phoenix. He twisted his body suddenly, and the 3 swords rotated. Countless slashes turned into sword chi and slashed towards Hawkeye. The entire ice surface was cut into ravines in all directions. Hawkeye immediately raised the black sword, Knight. He looked at Zoro seriously, and suddenly swung out a slash that was several times stronger than before, breaking through the countless sword chi in an instant. However, Zoro's figure rushed to him again, with a cold murderous intent, and shouted the name of the move. 3 Swords Secret Blue Dragon Song Flowing Water. That's right. This is the move that should have been mastered 2 years later, but in the battles with countless 6-style masters of Rashomon, Fishman karate masters and Daz bonus, Zoro unlocked this move in advance. And the purpose of using this move is very simple. It is to knock down the black knife Knight in Hawkeye's hand while he is not aware of it. Hawkeye's eyes condensed as he came with great momentum. He finally showed his serious side. With the force of lightning, he swung the black knife and chopped it down mercilessly. The 2 sides crossed, and in a flash, the sound of the swords clashing resounded through the world. The collision of domineering and domineering made the world dark. Then, in the painful scream of the blue dragon slash, a magnificent sword energy cut off the dragon head. Then, in Zoro's extremely shocked expression, the snow walker who was obviously covered with domineering was broken just like that. He staggered 2 steps. The 2 staggered. Zoro slowly took off the Wado Ikimonji and Kitetsu, inserted them into the scabbard, stroked the snow that had accompanied him for more than a year, hid it in the scabbard, and suddenly turned to look at Hawkeye, opened his arms. Roranoa Zoro. It is undeniable that you are a very powerful swordsman, but having a strong domineering aura is not enough. Your swordsmanship is still too immature. Hawkeye turned and looked at Zoro, giving a fair evaluation. This is the last time I lose. Next time, when I challenge you again, I will definitely become the world's greatest swordsman. Zoro answered with equal seriousness. So what are you doing now? Being injured from behind is a shame for a swordsman. Since I lost, I have to pay the price for failing in the duel. Even if you want to take my life, I have no complaints. Go ahead. This time, Hawkeye was finally moved. He looked at Zoro deeply, then swung the black knife fiercely and slashed it down. Roranoa Zoro, I remember your name. I will be on the throne of the world's #1, waiting for you to challenge me again. Hawkeye put away the black knife Knight and said seriously. The heavy rain poured down suddenly, soaking Zoro to the bone. At this moment, Luo Chi's voice rang out. Zoro, now you understand the gap between you and Hawkeye. Walking up to him calmly, he squatted down, and Nami followed him, opening the umbrella to cover Luo Chi's head. Reaching out, she placed her hand on Zoro's chest, healing the narrow wound for him, but only leaving the scar. After helping Zoro up from the ground, Luo Chi continued. I will keep this scar for you. Remember it forever. With this belief, I believe that one day you will be able to defeat Hawkeye. Yes. Nodding vigorously, Zoro stood behind him. Then, Luo Qi turned to look at Hawkeye, stretched out his hand and said elegantly. Mr. Mihawk, I am the president of the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce. It is an honor to meet you. You must be tired after the long journey. Why don't you come to my place and sit down? I have something to talk to you about. Maybe you will be interested. Glancing at Luo Qi, Hawkeye stretched out his hand and shook it with him, then said. Rashomon Chamber of Commerce, the Grand Line and the Four Seas are the most popular consortiums. I also want to hear what a big businessman who can be followed by a swordsman like Zoro would talk to me about. As he was speaking, another voice sounded. Foo 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 foo. From a distance, Doflamingo, wearing a pink coat, walked over at 2.58 million steps. Beside him, there was Monet with the snow fruit. At this time, Monet had not yet experienced the transformation by Trafalgar Law 2 years later. His hands were soft and his legs were long. Like Nami, he was holding an umbrella for Doflamingo. It was not until he walked in front of Rosaki that he took out his hand, stretched it out to Rosaki, and laughed. Hey, 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 hey. Since you invited Hawkeye, why not include me too? What do you think? Mr. Luo Qi. At the port, Nico Robin, Nojiko, Vivi, Makino, Kaya, Kalamon, Kanis, and Laki were also waiting quietly with umbrellas. Not far from Nico Robin, Aokiji was also standing there. Nico Robin, it seems that you have found the harbor that you care about most and feel most comfortable in. Aokiji said softly. Yes. If anyone wants to hurt Rosaki, I will make him regret coming to this world. With the strength of an admiral, Nico Robin's fear of Aokiji completely disappeared. Holding an umbrella and staring at Rosaki who was approaching, Robin's eyes flashed with infinite tenderness and cold murderous intent. The former was to Rosaki, and the latter was telling Aokiji. Aokiji sighed without comment, and his heart seemed particularly complicated. Although he was happy that Robin had found his true self, he felt sorry for Nico Robin. It seemed that he felt that Robin following Rosaki was not the right choice. But when he saw Robin walk up to Rosaki and wipe the rain off his body intimately, he felt that maybe this was also a good destination for Robin. Mr. Luo Qi, why did you appear in the Water City? Putting away his complicated thoughts, Aokiji looked up at Luo Qi and asked. This was the purpose of his coming here. After discovering that Luo Qi had sent people to send invitations to reporters in the Sabayati archipelago, Sengoku has been uneasy. Fortunately, Marineford is not far from the Water City. Therefore, Aokiji was specially sent here. Of course, Aokiji came first. As for the warships, they were still on the sea and had not arrived. Doflamingo was not surprised by the appearance of Aokiji. After knowing what the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce traded with the Navy, Luo Qi's appearance in the Water City with such fanfare would definitely attract the admiral. Therefore, he just stood aside with a smile and watched quietly. Hawkeye on the side, although his face was indifferent, he was very curious in his heart. Just a businessman who rose in the Grand Line, why would he attract the attention of the admiral? Luo Qi spread his hands and said helplessly. Mr. Aokiji, as a businessman, you should make money first. After trading with your navy, do I lose the right to do business? Aokiji frowned immediately after saying this. Luo Qi saw that Aokiji didn't speak, nor did he hesitate. Instead, he stretched out his hand and said with a smile. No matter what, I am a guest now. I am even more excited about this trade fair because of the participation of the Admiral of the Navy. Subconsciously, Aokiji ignored the hand that Luo Qi extended and said bluntly. Mr. Rosaki, your ability is very special, so let's not shake hands. Doflamingo's smile disappeared instantly after hearing this. He felt something was wrong. He just took the initiative to extend his hand and shook hands with Rosaki. Sure enough. In Doflamingo's almost sour face, Rosaki imitated him and started to move his fingers. Aokiji vaguely realized that his arm was raised uncontrollably, and he immediately turned into an ice man and broke Rosaki's ability. The ice spread and quickly approached Rosaki. And Rosaki also unceremoniously released the ability of the thunder fruit. As thunder and lightning intertwined, The huge high temperature instantly melted the ice layer spreading towards him. Until this time, Aokiji stopped testing and said unhappily. I don't want you to use my ability to do something shameful. Although it was only a brief confrontation, it revealed a lot of information to Hawkeye and Doflamingo. This made Doflamingo's green face, which had already guessed that he had given the ability to Rozuki himself, turn greener. Since you don't want to, forget it. Luo Qi shrugged indifferently, no longer paying attention to Aokiji, and left with his men. Before leaving, he did not forget to glance at the alley in the distance. The direction that Luo Qi was looking at. In the alley not far away. Blackbeard and his group were sitting together discussing. They all saw the brief confrontation between Luo Qi and Aokiji just now. This Luo Qi seems to have discovered us just now. It was Poison Q who spoke, took a sip of wine, looked at Blackbeard with lingering fear and said. Sure enough, this guy's strength is quite terrifying. No wonder the swordsman who dueled with Zoro followed him wholeheartedly. Fan Oka also looked uncertain. Gulp. Blackbeard swallowed his saliva and said with some regret. The way that guy looked at me just now was full of conqueror's haki. This trip was in vain. I finally heard that this guy named Luo Qi has some special abilities. I was thinking of killing him. Let's see. So what should we do now? Badgers scratched the back of his head and asked. After a moment's hesitation, Blackbeard made a decision. Let's wait in Water City for a few days. Didn't Luo Qi say there would be a trade fair? I think there will be many pirates with bounties of over 100 million by then. We can take this opportunity to capture a few and attract the attention of the Navy headquarters. Mr. Rozuki, have you mastered my fruit ability? On the first floor of the manor, on the sofa in the living room. Rozuki had just sat down. Doflamingo immediately pulled a long face and asked. This question had been held back for a long time, and his stinky face has not yet recovered. Don't worry, Doflamingo, it's only temporary. Rosaki smiled, took the coffee handed over by Pola, and was delighted when he saw Mingo curled up on the sofa without energy. He had been thinking about what to choose for the second devil fruit for Robin, Vivi and the others. And Vivi, who possessed the spider silk fruit, made Rosaki think of Doflamingo's thread fruit at the first time. In order to make up for the problem of insufficient firmness of the spider silk fruit, the thread fruit is undoubtedly the best choice. The steel wire fruit and the like are too single, and their effects are completely different from those of the thread fruit. Small, secretive, strong and not weak. If the spider silk fruit's adhesion, power extraction characteristics, and invisibility are added, then Vivi can manipulate her opponents as she pleases in the future, and she doesn't even have to worry about others finding out how she did it. This may be the legendary killing invisibly. Hearing what Rozuki said, Doflamingo's face looked much better. After all, if Rozuki really stole his fruit ability permanently, Doflamingo would never dare to do business with Rozuki so high profile in the future. Rozuki had the same idea. It would be a waste to kill Doflamingo now, because this guy is the only rich man among the 7 warlords of the sea. Although his wealth is not as good as Guild Tessero's, he is at least a figure of hundreds of billions. He can do business with Caesar, Kaido, and Tessero at the same time, and he also controls Dressrosa. Doflamingo is a cash cow, and we have to fleece him no matter what. My purpose of coming here is actually very simple. I came for the devil fruit optimization fluid. I believe you are not the kind of person who will sell all the stuff to the Navy in one go, you must have more in your hands. When Doflamingo thought that his ability was given to the other party by himself, he didn't want to stay any longer, and he got straight to the point and stated his purpose. So, do you really only need this one thing? Luo Qi smiled mysteriously and then tempted. As for Doflamingo wanting the incomplete version of the devil fruit optimization liquid, Luo Qi would of course sell it to him. Just kidding, he jumped into the pit himself, how could he not satisfy him? There are still 6 days before the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce's trade fair will be broadcast live around the world. At that time, there will be several products on display. Are you sure that there is nothing you want among them? Listening to Rozuki's words, Doflamingo hesitated. Although he didn't want to deal with Rozuki again for a second, the mystery of the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce did make him particularly excited, and he also wanted to know what other products Rozuki had. In the end, the temptation in his heart was greater than his very face-saving character. He stood up and left a sentence. In 6 days, I will come to the site to see in person what products you will bring out. Then he turned around and left. After Doflamingo left, Rozuki looked at Hawkeye again and extended an olive branch to him. Mr. Hawkeye, I would like to invite you to join the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce. Is this what you were looking for me for? Hawkeye frowned and asked calmly. He thought it would be something he was interested in, but he didn't expect that it was just to invite him. Luo Qi snapped his fingers. An employee immediately replaced the coffee on the table for Hawkeye and replaced it with a glass of delicious red wine. After taking a sip of coffee, Luo Qi continued. Don't rush to refuse, listen to me and then make a decision. Hawkeye picked up the red wine, smelled it, looked up at Luo Qi, and said nothing. You just need to promise that you will serve as a steward of the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce when you lose your status as one of the 7 warlords of the sea. Rashomon Chamber of Commerce will not ask you to do anything, and Rashomon Chamber of Commerce will provide you with top-level services, including priority and free use of any products under Rashomon Chamber of Commerce. Even if you travel, no matter where you go, food, clothing, housing and transportation will be arranged by someone, and it will not affect your life. In addition, Rashomon will pay for all your expenses. This request is quite simple. And for a person of Hawkeye's level. Indeed, such an investment is worthy of his strength. The 2 great swordsmen are enough to deter any villain. Even the Navy dare not act rashly. Listening to Luo Qi's proposal, Hawkeye was silent for a rare time. In fact, he really wanted to know why the man in front of him offered such a chip. And the loss of the identity of the 7 warlords of the sea, which made Hawkeye also very curious, why Luo Qi dared to be sure that he would lose the identity of the 7 warlords of the sea. After thinking again and again, out of that strong curiosity, Hawkeye drank the red wine in the glass in one gulp. He stood up and answered. I don't need Rashomon Chamber of Commerce to provide me with any services, but I can promise you that if one day I lose my status as a Shichibukai, I will consider your proposal. After 3 days, Khalifa finally understood what exhaustion and dreamlike were. Her mind was completely empty. She felt the powerlessness of wanting more. Finally, early in the morning, Khalifa left Rozuki's manor exhausted. Although Rozuki had never told her what his preferences were, it was clear that everything was self-evident. In addition, Khalifa had to pass on the news that Rozuki was going to hold a trade fair in the Water City. As groups of reporters arrived at the Water City, groups of reporters gathered outside the manor, obviously eager to dig out some explosive news before the time specified in the invitation letter. It's true. After 2 days of waiting, a huge piece of explosive news was delivered to the door. The Rashomon Chamber of Commerce covered our food and accommodation for 7 days at once, which was really generous. But no matter what, the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce really wants to make a big move this time, otherwise they wouldn't have brought all of us reporters here. I also saw Doflamingo, Hawkeye Mahawk, and Admiral Aokiji of the Navy headquarters. With so many big names, this trade fair is really exciting. A group of reporters gathered together to discuss, and faintly heard screams coming from not far away. Several people subconsciously thought that the president of the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce had appeared. They hurried to go up. The next second, they all turned into stones with hearts in their eyes. Da. 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 A group of women approached the gate of Rashomon Chamber of Commerce. The leading woman had black hair and golden rings of 9 snakes hanging from her ears. She wore a red shirt with a wide collar and a long skirt slit to her hips. She wore safety pants produced by Rashomon Chamber of Commerce underneath. Her beautiful face was filled with pride and disdain. It was none other than the pirate queen who hurried back from the New World, Boa Hancock. She mercilessly kicked the door of the manor open. A dozen assassins immediately rushed up and stopped her. She skillfully lifted her long hair and said with seductive eyes, "No matter what I do, you will forgive me, because my beauty is too dazzling." Then, in the next second, she launched the sweet wind without mercy. But this time, even she was surprised. Because no assassin was tempted by her charm. They still attacked her quickly. Fragrant kick. Frowning, the Empress quickly rushed into the dead soldiers and kicked with both legs. This time, the sweet fruit finally played the role of petrification. But it was not petrification due to charm, but completely petrification passively assisted by the sweet fruit and the fragrant kick. Boa Hancock. If you are here to see me, please don't embarrass my employees. Luo Qi's voice sounded in her ears. Immediately, the arrogant empress stopped her attack. She looked at the main entrance and saw Luo Qi's tall and handsome figure standing there quietly. The next second, a powerful domineering aura pressure came over her. She also used the domineering aura to resist. In an instant, the two domineering auras intertwined, and a sharp hissing sound rang out. The air between heaven and earth stagnated, and the originally clear sky instantly became gloomy. One step forward, the unrivaled top domineering aura instantly broke through the Empress's domineering aura. The Empress subconsciously took 2 steps back. With a face full of shock, she waved her hand and unwillingly lifted the semi-petrified state of Luo Qi's assassins. Luo Qi then retracted his domineering aura and spoke. I feel honored that the Empress came to visit me personally. Since we are going to discuss business, I might as well spare those reporters at the door. They are still useful to me. After saying this, I stepped aside and politely invited her to come in for a detailed discussion. After looking at Luo Qi with a complicated look, the Empress raised her hand again and released the petrified state of those reporters at the door of the manor. She walked past Luo Qi without saying a word. The faint feminine fragrance on her body made Luo Qi's heart beat faster. Although he was strong enough to completely restrain the Empress's charm, he certainly knew what kind of person he was. He had to find a way to copy the Empress's sweet fruit, otherwise he would be easily fooled. As for the reporters at the door, they had no idea what had just happened. After a brief daze, they saw the Empress walk into the manor again, and immediately took the camera phone bug and started taking pictures frantically. I need the formula of the Sea King whitening cream in your hand. Boya Hancock spoke immediately after she entered the room and before she sat down. Hearing this, Luo Qi immediately activated the ability of the Heart Network, and then asked. Why would the Empress care so much about a whitening product? Aren't you already the most beautiful in the world? Why are there so many whys? Can you give me one sentence? The Empress glanced at Luo Qi, frowned, and asked impatiently. At the same time, the voice in her heart also sounded. This Sea King whitening cream can actually lighten the hoof prints of the celestial dragons. If I can get the formula and improve the whitening effect myself, maybe I can completely remove the mark. Ha! Hearing the Empress's voice, Luo Qi's mouth curled up. He naturally knew the effect of whitening cream. Those sold outside were just products with reduced whitening effect. The one Robin used at the beginning was the most perfect version. That's why, in 1 year, Robin could become white so quickly. But, the best way to remove the hoof prints of the celestial dragons is not whitening cream. Even the most perfect version will still leave faint scars. If you want to completely eliminate the hoof prints of the celestial dragons, you have to rely on yourself or the repair fruit. He had a plan in mind. Luo Qi immediately raised his head, stretched out his hand to Boa Hancock, and said with a smile. Ms. Boa Hancock, I welcome every customer very much. Perhaps we can have a good chat about the recipe. Looking at the hand that Rozaki extended, the Empress hesitated for a moment, but finally reluctantly stretched out her hand and shook it with Rozaki. The ability is at hand. The moment the hands touched, Rozaki immediately activated his ability and stole the ability of the Empress's sweet fruit. It was almost just a short moment of obtaining the ability of the sweet fruit. Rozaki's entire charm has undergone a qualitative leap. If it was, the previous Rozaki gave people the feeling of being only elegant, handsome, mysterious and fickle. Then, under the effect of the sweet fruit, Rozaki now gives people the feeling of being. He is so handsome and charming. He is so noble and elegant. He is so mysterious and attractive. His fickleness should be taken for granted. After all, no matter what mistakes he makes, he deserves to be forgiven. The moment the hands touched, under the effect of the sweet fruit, even the Empress's heart trembled, and she felt that the man in front of her was the only one who was worthy of her peerless beauty. Boa Hancock didn't understand. Rozaki didn't give her such a feeling before. At best, he could only be considered not so annoying. But at this moment, he made her feel so inexplicably moved. Under the heart net, her thoughts were completely heard by Rozaki. Even Rozuki didn't expect that the sweet fruit could actually enhance a person's charm, and it was absolute charm. She casually reached out and took out a golden pocket watch from her chest. It immediately attracted the admiration and love of the people brought by Hancock. Even Pola, who came to deliver coffee, was no exception and almost knocked over the coffee in her hand. Seeing such a powerful effect, Rozuki immediately looked at Boa Hancock and smiled slightly. Ms. Boa Hancock, if you don't mind, let's go to another place to chat. Looking at the charming smile on Rozuki's lips, the Empress's heart trembled, and she agreed without thinking. Rozuki stretched out her hand and gestured to her elegantly. The arrogant Empress didn't even think about it, and stretched out her hand and put it on Rozuki's hand. She let Rozuki lead her upstairs. Boa Sandersonia, Boa Marigold and the Empress's pet Salome wanted to follow. But they were stopped by Rozuki. I want to talk to your lady snake alone. Don't worry, I'm a businessman, not a heinous criminal. Even Boa Hancock herself took the initiative to speak up. You guys wait downstairs, don't worry. Seeing that their sister had spoken, they could only give up this plan. On the second floor, in the bedroom, Luo Chi closed the door and looked at Boa Hancock and said, 17 years ago, a 12-year-old girl and her two sisters were abducted from the ship of the Nine Snakes pirates by human traffickers and sold to the world's noble celestial dragons, who branded their backs with celestial dragon hoof prints. As soon as these words came out, the Empress woke up instantly, her body trembled violently. With frost in her eyes, she looked at Luo Chi coldly, her fists clenched tightly. How do you know these things? Turning his head, Luo Chi looked at the Empress and answered elegantly again. Empress, don't be nervous. I've said before that I'm a businessman. I'll do a detailed investigation of every potential client. Please believe me, I have no ill intentions and am even willing to help you. Hearing Luo Chi's words, the Empress slowly loosened her clenched fists, strode to the bedside, sat down, and said calmly. I only need the formula of the whitening cream in your hand, you can't help me with anything else. Snap. With a snap of his fingers, Luo Chi turned into the formula of the whitening cream of the Sea King, looked at the Empress and said. This is the formula of the whitening cream, but I may disappoint you. If you use it to remove the hoof prints of the celestial dragons, it cannot completely remove them because it is only a whitening cream, not a scar removal cream. Sure enough, a look of disappointment flashed across the eyes of the Empress. As she was about to say goodbye, she heard Luo Chi's voice again. However, if you want to remove the hoof prints of the celestial dragons, I can do it, it is completely painless, and there will be absolutely no sequelae. These words once again made the eyes of the Empress bloom with infinite hope. Do you really have a way to remove the hoof prints of the celestial dragons? Biting her silver teeth, Boa Hancock couldn't help but open her mouth to confirm again. Luo Chi didn't say anything. She just raised her hand to break a water cup, then reached out to cover it, and then in Boa Hancock's surprised eyes. The water cup was restored again, intact. At this moment, she finally confirmed that the man in front of her did have the ability to help her remove scars. After hesitating for a moment, she stood up and turned her back to Luo Chi. Slowly took off her top, reached out and lifted up her black and beautiful long hair. On her smooth back, the faint hoof prints of the celestial dragons were still dazzling. Just as you said, the Tianlong people branded this mark on my sister and me. This became the only secret that my sister and I dared not reveal to others, until your Chamber of Commerce launched that whitening cream. After using it for a few months, the mark magically faded. I originally wanted to use the formula in your hand to increase the effect and completely eliminate it. As she spoke, 2 lines of tears fell, and her voice trembled slightly. Obviously, this was a scar that she could not forget. Suddenly, a warm hand rested on her shoulder, and an extremely gentle voice sounded. Her heart trembled violently. Hancock, you are no worse than anyone else, and everything will pass, this hoofprint will no longer exist, and those celestial dragons who have hurt you will eventually shake their heads and beg me to protect them. What do you want to do? Turning around suddenly, looking at Luo Chi who was close at hand, Hancock asked in disbelief. Wealth, fame, beauty, strength and power are what every man pursues. Looking at Hancock tenderly, he restrained the impulse in his heart, reached out to wipe away her tears, and said slowly. The reason why the Tianlong people are so unscrupulous is because they have these. If one day, there is a person who controls half of the world's wealth and has a world-renowned reputation, I will never be afraid of their strength and the power to influence the world's situation. Then, the end of the celestial dragons will come. Hearing this, how could Boa Hancock not know what Rosaki's goal was? To say that this was Rosaki's big talk. Boa Hancock was the first one who didn't believe it. It's not that she hadn't collected intelligence about the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce. But apart from knowing that she had met with Admiral Aokiji and Navy hero Garp 10 months ago, and killed Crocodile. In the next 10 months, the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce rose rapidly like a dazzling superstar. Its light enveloped the entire first half of the Grand Line in the Four Seas, and no other Chamber of Commerce could match it. In addition to what just happened. After a brief confrontation, the heart often beats at this moment. Luo Chi's shocking ambition and attitude towards the celestial dragons instantly broke Hancock's defense. Her cheeks were flushed with admiration, and the whole person seemed to have lost strength and fell into Luo Chi's arms. Reaching out to hold this peerless beauty. Luo Chi's mouth curled up slightly. The ability of the sweet fruit is indeed extraordinary. Even if you do something wrong, people will forgive you unconditionally. And if you do something that makes the other person's heart beat, it will make people fall into it and unable to extricate themselves. Seeing that the time was ripe, Luo Chi then reached out and placed her hand on Boa Hancock's back, and the ability of the repair fruit was activated instantly. Waves of warm and numb feeling spread throughout her body. As the hoof prints of the celestial dragons completely disappeared, the perfectly smooth back regained its tenderness. The queen finally couldn't help but let out a delicate hum. This sound completely aroused Luo Chi's desire. The whole room was also filled with beauty. Lifting the queen's chin and looking at her beautiful face. What do you want to do? In the watery eyes of the empress, Luo Chi's face slowly approached. After a kiss, Luo Chi raised his head and smiled with satisfaction. I want to. He picked up the empress with his big hands, held her and gently put her on the bed. Boa Sandersonia and Boa Marigold were sitting in the living room on the first floor with the crew of the Nine Snakes pirates. They sat there for 3 hours. They stood up and sat down several times, and they were really impatient. Finally, when they stood up again and wanted to rush upstairs to see what was going on, the bedroom door on the second floor opened. Boa Hancock was wearing a bright red pajamas, holding the wall and slowly walked to the corridor on the second floor. With a flushed face, she said to Boa Sandersonia and Boa Marigold. Stay at Luo Chi's manor tonight. Luo Chi and I still have some things to discuss. I will talk to you in detail later. Elder sister. Snake Sama. Boa Sandersonia, Boa Marigold and the crew of the Nine Snakes pirates shouted subconsciously when they saw Boa Hancock in an abnormal state. But Boa Hancock just waved her hand and said shyly. I'm fine, don't worry, you don't have to be too nervous, Luo Chi is a very good person. After saying that, he returned to the house again. Luo Chi, I am back. Looking at Luo Chi's face that was staring at her, Hancock blushed and acted like a little girl. With a soft moan from Boa Hancock, Rosaki slowly took out the golden abacus and began to calculate right in front of Hancock. Hancock, how about we settle the accounts next? What? Hancock gritted her teeth. She never expected that Luo Chi would say this to her in such an embarrassing situation. But before she could react, Luo Chi moved again, holding her in his arms, and said affectionately while playing with the abacus. Hancock, your original bounty is 80 million Baileys, let's just calculate it like this. The Emperor of Nine Snake Island is a very valuable person. According to the calculation that there are 100,000 people in the Kingdom of Daughters, even if one person is worth 500,000 belly, that is 50 billion belly. Now you are in my hands, so this money must be counted on you. Secondly, you originally wanted the formula for the whitening cream. So far, the value of the whitening cream for the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce is about 20 billion Baileys. Although I used my fruit ability to replace it, this account still has to be counted on you. Finally, I know you don't want to be one of the 7 warlords of the sea, so in order to protect you and the Nine Snakes Island, I have to at least face the entire navy. As usual, the others don't count. 1 marshal, 3 admirals, 1 garp, and 1 crane, their value is about 10 billion berries. Therefore, you should now owe me 80 million Baileys. I'm easy to talk to. After deducting the decimals, you owe me 80 billion berries in total. If you can't pay, you can compensate me with the people in the Nine-Snake Island. How about that? Listening to Luo Chi's calculations and feeling the strong impulse, Boa Hancock hit Luo Chi's chest like a spoiled child. In a voice as thin as a mosquito's hum, she whispered in Luo Chi's ear. I will obey you in everything. Luo Chi laughed, put away the golden abacus in an instant, and teased Boa Hancock. Then I'm welcome. Is it difficult to conquer a pirate female emperor? She also had to make her understand that she was also deeply disgusted with the Tianlong people. And she had enough courage and wisdom to be able to stroke the scars behind her. This is the benefit of beauty. The reason why Luo Chi had to prepare to expand these parts of the Grand Disalo in advance was that he wanted to move the Kingdom of Women to the Grand Disalo after taking over the Grand Disalo. With the expansion of the industrial chain, the construction and operation of the Sky City and the Sky Track, the re-entry of the arms industry, the clothing, cosmetics, health products, automobile manufacturing and other industries were born step by step. 100,000 dead men are far from enough to provide productivity. Looking at the entire pirate world, the only country that Luo Chi can recruit with confidence and has a large population is Boa Hancock's Kingdom of Women. In the last 3 days, Luo Chi started to get busy. The first thing was defense. As the trade fair approached, the Navy, the world government, the 7 warlords of the sea, and the Revolutionary Army, which was sure to appear, all turned their attention to the Water City. The Demon Slayer order might happen at this trade fair. Therefore, Luo Chi once again released 10,000 dead soldiers, lurking in all directions of the Water City, ready to deal with any emergencies at any time. The more than 9,000 dead soldiers in the open were all busy setting up the trade fair site. And Luo Chi was not idle either. He also picked out a few dead soldiers from the carefully selected devil fruits and let them eat them. Of course, the 2 mythical beast species were still kept, and Luo Chi planned to find a suitable opportunity to let Canis and Lacey eat them. In addition, on the last night, all the troops sent by all forces arrived. First, a luxurious merchant ship docked at the port. Stussy, who was carrying a pink bag, wearing a white hat, a rose-colored long skirt, and a white waistcoat, boarded the Water City under the welcome of CP9 Spandam. Second, the Admiral Kizaru of the Navy headquarters. After Aokiji reported the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce's plan in the Water City, Sengoku decisively sent this lazy admiral who clocked in and out on time again. He was accompanied by Colonel Tina, who was familiar to Rozuki. Finally, a mysterious civilian ship docked at the port in a low-key manner. Monkey, wearing a green cloak, D-Dragon, and the orange-haired girl Kurla. With the appearance of these 3 representatives, all the important figures who appeared at this trade fair have arrived in the Water City. The venue of the trade fair was arranged at Dock No. 4 in the Water City. Because they signed a 10 billion engineering project with Iceberg generously rented Dock No. 4 to Rashomon Chamber of Commerce for 3 days. And on the night of the last day, Dock Number 4 was completely blocked. Nearly 4,000 dead men surrounded the dock from the top to the ground. No one could see anything inside. Zoro, Daz Bonus, Zyle, Mr. 3, and Mr. 5 watched in person. At the same time, the major islands of the 4 seas, the central cities of the major kingdoms of the Grand Line, the slave auction grounds of the Sabayati archipelago, and several important areas all set up giant screens, and huge video telephone bugs were quietly placed below. The employees of Rashomon Chamber of Commerce were stationed on the side. Of course. In addition, there are other places that put up video telephone bugs and took the initiative to connect to the video of this auction. The meeting room of the Navy headquarters in Marineford received the news from Aokiji. The office of the 5 elders in the Holy Land Jomaria received the news sent back by CP0 Stussy. The New World has Dressrose, Grand Disalo, Onigashima in Wano Country, Cake Island, Whitebeard's Moby Dick and even red-haired Shanks bases, thanks to Doflamingo's free promotion. When Doflamingo told him the news, Rosaki was overjoyed. It was of course a blessing that the 4 emperors also came to this trade fair. Even for Doflamingo. This guy who took the initiative to give away the string fruit and was eager to jump into the big pit of the devil fruit optimization liquid. Now, because he saw the admiral of the Navy headquarters intervened, he took the initiative to help him contact the four emperors. To be honest, Rosaki was really reluctant to give up such a high-quality potential customer who took the initiative to let him fleece. Of course, there will always be a day when all the wool is fleeced. But at the moment, it seems that this smart guy is really cute. On the day of the trade fair, countless reporters had already gathered at the entrance of dock number 4. Even Mancha D. Dragon and Kurla, Blackbeard and his men were all hiding in the dark. Even Stussy turned into a socialite and appeared in the crowd. There were even many pirates who came here because of their reputation, but there were only a few with a bounty of over 100 million, and there was no so-called supernova. With Rosaki and the others appearing. Aokiji, Kizaru, Doflamingo, Hawkeye, Spandam of CP9, and Iceberg all arrived at the scene on time. The door of dock number 4 was slowly pushed open. Rosaki took the lead and walked towards the door with Boa Hancock, Nico Robin, Nami and others. Stussy greeted Rosaki with a smile on her face, and after putting down her business card, she successfully followed Rosaki into the door of dock no. 4. Then came the reporters who received the invitation. After showing the invitation in their hands, they also successfully entered the interior of dock number 4. Iceberg even took a day off at the request of a group of ship workers. These ship workers were allowed to watch the trade fair live on the high platform crane. Of course, this was also driven by CP9 and Khalifa, the secretary of Iceberg. Apart from them, no one else was qualified to enter dock number 4. D. Dragon, transformed into wind, hid in the venue. As for Kurla, he stole a reporter's invitation and sneaked in. Although Blackbeard was also curious about what would appear at the trade fair. However, after seeing the employees of Rashomon Chamber of Commerce shooting to death the pirates who wanted to break in violently one by one on the spot. Thinking of his embarrassing identity, he finally did not force his way in. At the same time, he also had a deep resentment towards Rosaki. Because the employees of Rashomon Chamber of Commerce killed the few big pirates with a bounty of over 100 million. This resulted in his wish to catch a few big pirates at the trade fair being dashed. He was not qualified to enter, and there were no pirates to catch him. In the end, he left with his crew in disgrace. Inside dock number 4, in the middle of the huge open space, there was a huge square stage. The stage was covered with 10 red cloths of different sizes. There were death warriors guarding the left and right sides of the red cloths. A long runway was built around the huge stage. 2 video phone worms stood in the open space on both sides of the stage. Outside the runway were the VIP seats and the press seats. On the left row sat the members of the Rashomon family, namely Boa Hancock and the others. On the right row sat Aokiji, Kizaru, Tina, Hawkeye, Doflamingo, Monet, Iceberg, Spandam, and Stussy. Behind them, there were nearly 100 press seats, which were already full. In addition, around dock number 4, there were nearly 500 employees of the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce responsible for security duties. The live phone worms were divided into 4 directions, facing the stage, the runway, the seats, and a huge candle wall in the distance. Luo Qi stood on the stage elegantly. The ability of the sweet fruit was activated, and he smiled charmingly. He glanced at the people below the stage, and then spoke to the Den Mushi who was in charge of the live broadcast. Start live streaming. In an instant, the entire pirate world was connected to the live broadcast of the Water City Dock No. 4. In the meeting room of the Navy headquarters. Sengoku, Garp, Suru, and Akainu looked at the figure of Rosaki on the screen and immediately frowned. This Luo Qi seems to have changed a lot since the first time I saw him 10 months ago. I feel that this guy's strength seems to be as dangerous as Aokiji said. It was Vice Admiral Suru who spoke. For some reason, when she looked at Luo Qi, she thought of the Queen of the 7 Warlords of the Sea, Boa Hancock. I've said it before, guys who trade pirate bounties with the Navy should be killed. Akainu also frowned, and his attitude towards Luo Qi was still very unfriendly. Akainu. You have to remember that Luo Qi is not a pirate. No matter how unhappy you are, you can't attack a very influential public figure without any reason. Zhang Guo, who was sitting in the middle, scolded. Garp, who was eating donuts on the side, laughed out loud. This guy Luo Qi seems to always be walking on the edge of the Navy's red line. Joe Maria. Meeting room of the five elders. Is this guy Luo Qi? Although I have seen his photo, I have to say that this little guy is more attractive than in the photo. One of the old men smiled and said half jokingly. Don't underestimate him because of his appearance. Look at who is present. The admirals, the 7 warlords of the sea, and even that Doflamingo kid are here. The other old man was very calm, frowning and reminding. I really want to know what Luo Qi will come up with this time. The old man holding the first generation of Kidetsu spoke calmly, making everyone else shut up and look at the screen. Sabayati Archipelago. Slave auction. 3 celestial dragons were sitting in the center, watching the giant screen. This Luo Qi is really handsome, I really want to taste him. Sha Lulia's eyes flashed with desire for Luo Qi, and she kept looking at him. These women, they are much better than the women I have. I must get them. With snot in his eyes, St. Charles's desire for Boa Hancock, Nico Robin, and Nami reached its peak, and he kept yelling at his father. Don't worry. As soon as the trade fair is over, I will contact the Navy. Aren't there 2 admirals on the scene? Let them arrest all the members of the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce and send them here. New World. The Great Disolo. Guild Tessero sat in the middle of the golden sofa. Holding the information about the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce in his hand, his eyes were fixed on the screen. Another businessman. He actually has a net worth of 100 billion, ha 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 ha. I really look forward to meeting this guy. If I can get all of this guy's money, I should be able to have more say in front of those people. Dressrose. In the middle of the arena. Countless people were watching the giant screen. Gaz was holding a microphone and explaining passionately. Oh. This is the president of the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Rozaki. Did you see it? Mr. Doflamingo of Dressrose is sitting in the VIP seat. In the corner, Mr. Toy Soldier and Rebecca were staring at the giant screen, not saying a word. The same scene also happened in King's Highland. Cake Island. Big Mom is looking at the giant screen while eating delicious desserts. The drool in her mouth drips onto the floor tiles, sizzling and smoking. Rashomon Chamber of Commerce. Luauchi. I've never heard of such a show. Well, I wonder if there will be any delicious desserts I want at the trade fair. On the sea outside Onigashima in Wano country. In a large ship of the beast pirates. Kaido gulped down a glass of wine and burst into tears from time to time. But when the picture on the screen appeared, Kaido couldn't help smacking his lips again. This guy Doflamingo actually insisted on letting me take a look at this auction. I really don't know what's so interesting about it. The Whitebeard pirates. On the Moby Dick. Whitebeard, with IV tubes all over his body, leaned back in his chair and looked at the giant screen. Originally, he didn't plan to watch it. Even though Doflamingo contacted him and said he would regret it if he didn't watch it, he still had no interest in it. Until Ace, who was far away in Alabasta, contacted him and told him what the Rashomon company had done in Alabasta. Only then did Whitebeard want to see who exactly was Rashomon, the man who killed Crocodile and turned the desert kingdom of Alabasta into an oasis city. He looks good, it's a pity he didn't become a pirate, kula la la la. The headquarters of the Red Hair Pirates. At this moment, Red Hair Shanks did not watch this grand live broadcast, as he was still hungover. However, several cadres such as Jesus BU were very interested in it, and directly got the video phone bug and watched it with relish. This made Red Hair Shanks glance at it from time to time. Of course, such scenes also happened all over the world. For example, the Straw Hat Boy Monkey in the Kingdom of Alabasta D. Luffy, he, Ace and Smoker are standing in the same square at this moment, looking at the giant screen, and they haven't noticed each other yet. Gentlemen, ladies, welcome to the first global trade fair of Rashomon Chamber of Commerce. Let me introduce myself. I am the president of Rashomon Chamber of Commerce, Lu Qi. A beautiful wave of the hand, an elegant smile in front of the camera. Immediately, countless women in the entire pirate world fell in love with him. The reporters under the stage screamed continuously. Seeing such a powerful effect, Luo Qi couldn't help but smile with satisfaction. Then he slowly took out a card, attached both hands, and the next second, gorgeous fireworks burst out. At the moment of blooming in the air, the logo of Rashomon Chamber of Commerce appeared. The fruit of embodiment. It is more real and more stable than the figuration of the phantom fruit of the famous singer Annie in the New World, and can even make real attacks. The opening ceremony was over. Luo Qi spoke again and finally got to the point. There are many categories of goods in this trade fair, and I believe there will always be one that you who are watching this live broadcast will like. Of course. In this trade fair, all the goods will only be displayed during the live broadcast. Those who need them can contact me for trading after the trade fair is over. As he said, he clapped his hands. A soldier came up holding an exquisite box. Everyone's eyes were instantly attracted, wanting to see what was inside. Luo Qi opened the box and took out a devil fruit from it. He placed it on the display stand in the center of the stage. He looked at the people below the stage. Many people immediately doubted whether this devil fruit was a special devil fruit. There were even many people who had devil fruit illustrations in their hands and wanted to flip through the illustrations to see which fruit it was. However, Luo Qi smiled nonchalantly and suddenly said, "The first item of this trade fair is a devil fruit, not one, but 40. And they are 40 animal-type devil fruits. Of course, I promise that I have never checked in advance which animal-type devil fruits these devil fruits are. 40 animal-type devil fruits." The moment this sentence was spoken, Kaido, who was far away in the New World, sat up suddenly, his eyes fixed on the devil fruits on the stage. You know. He was planning to form his own animal-type ability army. These 40 animal-type devil fruits, it can be said, were carefully prepared for him. 40 animal devil fruits. This trade fair is so generous right at the beginning, Doflamingo really didn't lie to me. After laughing loudly, Kaido looked at Drought Jack beside him without hesitation and ordered. The trade fair is over. Call the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce. I want all 40 devil fruits no matter what. The same scene also happened in Marineford. The last time, the 25 superhuman devil fruits made Zhang suffer a small loss. Although Luo Qi clearly stated that he had not seen the devil fruit illustrations. But Zhang was still very skeptical. After all, except for the 5 animal-type devil fruits, the remaining 20 superhuman-type devil fruits were all garbage. However, it is better to be safe than sorry. This time, 40 animal-type devil fruits were directly taken out, which made Zhang embarrassed again. After all, compared with the superhuman type, the ability of the animal type is much more stable. Even the garbage animal type can more or less increase the combat effectiveness. In any case, it can't be lost. After hesitating for a long time, he made up his mind that the Navy still had to buy back these 40 animal-type devil fruits. Of course, people like Spandam also wanted to buy a few. In fact, this is what Luo Qi bought just before the last 12-hour discount ended. Among these 40 animal-type devil fruits, 30 of them are docile and weak animal-type fruits such as chickens, ducks, geese, and rabbits. Only 10 are mediocre, such as the ordinary cat-type and dog-type fruits that are not strong in the 2 branches of cat-cat fruit and dog-dog fruit. The purpose of doing this is actually very simple. Luo Qi wants to reduce the appearance rate of junk devil fruits in the system mall. Then go to open the blind box. Although 2,000 points are required to open a blind box once, the 10% discount on devil fruits is not often available, and discount activities do not appear often. It is equivalent to purchasing devil fruits at a 20% discount, which is also a very cost-effective deal. With fewer junk devil fruits, the probability of opening good devil fruits in blind boxes will naturally be greater. By then, I can even create an army of people with abilities. Luo Qi could see all the expressions of the people present. Although there were only 40 animal-type devil fruits, it was enough to raise the atmosphere of the opening of this trade fair. Especially Luo Qi was almost certain. With these 40 animal-type devil fruits, Kaido, one of the 4 emperors, and the Navy headquarters would definitely not give in to each other. While the snipe and the clam fight, the fisherman benefits. No matter what the outcome, the one who benefits in the end is his Rashomon Chamber of Commerce. 40 devil fruits, that's really a big deal. The first product that appeared attracted so much attention. This Rashomon Chamber of Commerce is really high profile. Rashomon Chamber of Commerce is really mysterious. Countless discussions were heard around the world. For a time, the name of Rashomon Chamber of Commerce, just through an opening, became the focus of most attention. Countless pirates who thought they were powerful were eyeing the 40 devil fruits that appeared at the beginning. Even the 5 elders in the holy land of Jomaria expressed their feelings. It's really worth it. 40 animal-type devil fruits. Even if you are not one of the 4 emperors, you can still train a powerful pirate group in this sea. Luo Qi didn't care that much at this time. After putting away the devil fruit, he took a step back again, clapped his hands, and slowly the second item was pushed up. Covered with a red cloth. This time, Luo Qi didn't rush to lift the red cloth to reveal its true appearance. Instead, he slowly walked to the edge of the stage. He smiled politely at the camera and the people in the audience, and said, "As we all know, the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce is, in everyone's impression, a chamber of commerce that makes its fortune from clothing, cosmetics, and health products, but in fact, the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce is also a military-industrial chamber of commerce. A deal was made with the Navy some time ago, and the new weapons now in the hands of the Navy were developed by the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce." Having said that, the warring states in Marineford immediately became extremely ugly, his face became long, he gritted his teeth, and his beard shook angrily. What does Luo Qi want to do? Break the contract? Doflamingo's eyes lit up immediately. Doflamingo naturally needs no further explanation. He made a lot of money by selling weapons, and he naturally knew that the standard weapons equipped by the Navy were the work of the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce. This time, in addition to wanting to buy the devil fruit potion, he also wanted to get the AK-47 blueprint. But he never showed it. With an expression of expectation and curiosity, Doflamingo looked at Luo Qi on the stage. Luo Qi continued to speak. Rashomon Chamber of Commerce has always been honest in doing business. When it came to the weapons it delivered to the Navy headquarters last time, Rashomon Chamber of Commerce promised that it would not produce them again. Therefore, that weapon will not appear today. But the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce will launch a new weapon today, and its name is Vulcan Gatling. As he said this, he pulled open the red cloth. A very domineering revolver heavy machine gun appeared in front of everyone. He easily picked up the Gatling. Luo Qi held it in his hand and began to introduce it. This weapon is a combination of fast firing rate, large ammunition capacity and amazing power. Most importantly, this weapon is suitable for most people. He said. He pulled the trigger and aimed at the large candle wall in the distance, with a confident smile on his face. Gentlemen. Ladies. Now please enjoy the charm of this weapon. After saying that, he pulled the trigger. Hiss, 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 hiss. 12 bullet tubes spun wildly, blue flames came out of the muzzles, and bullets poured out like fire snakes. Countless shells fell to the ground, making a crisp sound. The Gatling gun's bullets smashed the huge candle wall directly with a devastating force. At this moment, everyone discovered that there was a thick steel plate behind the candle wall. The steel plate was densely covered with bullet holes. In just a dozen seconds, Luo Qi swept away all the bullets. Several dead soldiers stepped forward and pushed the steel plate away. Only then did everyone see that the wall behind the steel plate had been swept into mud. Everyone took a breath of cold air. The Vulcan Gatling gun was so powerful. Clap, 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 clap. In the audience, Doflamingo could no longer hold back and took the lead in applauding. This weapon was so popular. He even wanted to place a large order immediately, produce this weapon, and then sell it to weapon dealers all over the world at a high price. He was not worried at all that the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce would take away his business. Because, he knew that since Luo Qi asked him to watch here, it meant that the other party wanted to cooperate with him. The reporters in the audience were also stunned for a long time before they started to applaud. They had to give this face, otherwise, if the president of the Chamber of Commerce on the stage was embarrassed and pointed the gun at them, it would be too late to regret. Only Aokiji and Kizaru frowned, feeling that the Navy had been severely cheated. After all, their Navy had just spent hundreds of billions of berries in military funds to buy the standard weapon AK-47. Once this weapon becomes popular, the grassroots soldiers of their Navy will be like children holding toy guns, at the mercy of others. As for Stussy, who was sitting in the VIP seat, his eyes flashed with brilliance when he looked at Luo Qi. If this man can survive after today, he will definitely become another overlord of this world. Inside Doc No. 4. Monkey hiding in the darkness D long, looking at the shocking effect brought by the weapon just now, his eyes sparkled with excitement. Although he missed the AK-47 weapon, he saw another weapon that made him more excited. He felt that this trip to the Water City was a complete gain. At the same time, he made up his mind. After the trade fair was over, he had to have a good talk with Luo Qi no matter what. In fact, there are Gatling guns in this world. There is also a similar weapon with 6 barrels and rotating shooting. But no matter the firing rate, penetration, destructive power or deterrence, it is not as fierce as this weapon called Vulcan Gatling. And that Gatling gun uses ball bullets, which have average lethality and can't even penetrate steel plates. This weapon has completely raised the grade of this weapon to the level of artifact. All aspects of the attributes have been improved by at least 10 times. At the same time, people around the world who were watching the live broadcast had different expressions on their faces. The power of this weapon is too overbearing. If it is equipped on a ship, will the pirate ships dare to act so arrogantly in the future? Hiss. Such a thick steel plate was penetrated, and in such a short time, hundreds of bullets were fired. Look at the holes all over the wall. What is this Rashomon Chamber of Commerce going to do? A major reshuffle. Countless mixed opinions were raised. If the 40 animal-type devil fruits were the source of the impulse for countless pirates who thought they were powerful to attack the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce, then, the appearance of this, Vulcan Gatling, at this moment is the best medicine to make everyone tremble and sober up. Look at the densely packed Rashomon Chamber of Commerce employees at the trade fair. If everyone has such a weapon, which pirate group dares to invade? Bang! Zhongguo angrily punched the conference table. At this moment, he felt like a clown, without any demeanor of a wise general. It can even be said that whether it is the devil fruit or the AK-47, it is like a big pit dug by the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce for the Navy. They spent a lot of military funds on it. As a result, just after the army was fully equipped, the other party immediately took out a better weapon and slapped him in the face. I've said it before, but you didn't listen. Now Aokiji and Kizaru are here. I'd ask them to issue the Demon Slayer order. Anyway, that iceberg from Water City dared to lend the dock to the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce, so he's not a good person. Let's just destroy Water City as well. Akainu said sarcastically, holding a cigar in his mouth, and then said with a gloomy face. Sakazuki. There are hundreds of thousands of residents living in Water City, not to mention that there are 3 Shichibukai at the trade fair. Do you want to start a world war? Although Sengoku was also extremely angry at the moment, he had to be sober because he didn't want to bear the stigma of causing chaos in the world. Akainu wanted to say, justice cannot be tarnished. But he was suppressed by Garp's sharp eyes. Now we have no choice but to hold back. Luo Qi had planned this trade fair. I saw Spandam was also present. The Navy doesn't need to intervene in this matter. We just need to wait for the decision of the world government. Vice Admiral Suru stared at Luo Qi in the picture and said, Holy Land Jomaria. In the meeting room of the 5 elders. The 5 old men were silent at this moment. Is this weapon threatening? To them, it is just a toy. Even pirates with a bounty of over 100 million basically don't care about this weapon. But, how many powerful people are there in this world? In the vast world of pirates, with a population of hundreds of millions, how many people can be fearless of this weapon? Hundreds of thousands. Millions. What about the rest? Should we intervene in this matter? If such weapons were to flow into the world, it would pose a huge threat to the world government and the Navy. One of the old men said slowly. The Rashomon Chamber of Commerce is too mysterious. The information we have now is just the tip of the iceberg. If we take action now, we may not be able to destroy this Chamber of Commerce in the Water City. On the contrary, if we force them into a corner, they will run to cooperate with the Revolutionary Army and the 4 emperors. At that time, the Navy and the world government will face a huge disaster. Another old man expressed his concerns. There is no need to turn against the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce. All the Rashomon Chamber of Commerce wants is money. As long as he is willing to cooperate only with the Navy like the previous weapon, it will be fine. Once the world government allies and the navy are equipped in batches, the number of pirates on the sea will definitely decrease significantly, and it will also have a great effect on suppressing rebellions in various places. The most important thing is Luo Qi. His hidden strength is not only what he did when he made the deal with Sengoku. According to the news from CP9, any one of his employees is stronger than that kid Robin Lucci from CP9. Looking at the trade fair, he still has thousands of such employees. Rashomon Chamber of Commerce is just looking for money. We don't need to force them to become pirates. The old man holding the first generation of Kidetsu narrowed his eyes and analyzed calmly. Most of the newly emerged pirates would not be able to reach the New World under this weapon. Once the number of pirates entering the New World is reduced, the power of the four emperors will gradually weaken. If the rebels around the world are suppressed, the pressure on the allies will be reduced a lot. On the contrary, paying a lot of money in exchange for substantial benefits is still acceptable to him. After showing this weapon, Luo Qi on the stage did not rush to introduce the next one, but began to interact with the reporters in the audience very patiently and humorously. In fact, he was also waiting. Aokiji, Kizaru, CP9, Stussy, these people representing the Navy and the world government, will they receive the news from their backers within 10 minutes? If someone answers the Den Den Mushi, he can know the other party's plan through the Heart Network. Friendly cooperation or a battle. If no one answers the Den Den Mushi for 10 minutes, it naturally means that the bottom line of the forces behind these people has been refreshed by themselves again. But it's a pity. The Navy and the world government do not seem to intend to let this trade fair go on so easily. Aokiji took out the Den Den Mushi. At this moment, the Den Den Mushi was ringing, and it was obvious that someone was contacting him. Glancing at Luo Qi, who was still on the stage talking to the reporters behind him, Aokiji quickly connected the Den Den Mushi. Aokiji. The five elders just called me and asked you and Kizaru to talk to Rosaki as soon as the trade fair is over. This weapon can only be supplied to the Navy and the world government. Zhang Guo's voice came from the Den Den Mushi. Should I negotiate with Kizaru? Aokiji frowned and asked. No. You contact the five elders directly, and then they will talk to Luo Qi in person. Zhang Guo spoke again, and his tone was obviously quite relaxed. After all, this mess was taken over by the world government, and he didn't need to worry about it anymore. Got it. Aokiji replied simply and quickly hung up the Den Den Mushi. Kizaru, who was standing by, crossed his legs and smacked his lips. Oh, this Rashomon Chamber of Commerce is really incredible. Even those old guys above were alarmed. It's so scary. Doflamingo, who was sitting next to Aokiji, naturally heard these words clearly, and his original excited look was swept away. The veins on his head were almost popping out. Such a big piece of cake was gone just like that. How could he be happy? And Luo Qi on the stage also heard it clearly through the Heart Network. The corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up a smile. Five elders. Haha. I really look forward to a head-on confrontation with the top powerful people in this world. Thinking of this, Luo Qi also hastily ended his interaction with the reporters. He turned around and walked to the center of the stage again. He clapped his hands. Immediately attracted everyone's attention. This time, nothing was brought onto the stage. On the contrary, behind the huge stage curtain, several cars of different sizes and shapes slowly drove out. Luxury supercars for 2 people, dreamy coupes for 4 people, comfortable sedans for 5 people, large Hummers for 5 people, RVs for a family, commercial vehicles for 8 people, large trucks with huge back seat space, and large buses for more than 20 people. The shape is very similar to the turtle car on the Disolo, which makes people's eyes light up. Countless reporters began to press the shutter in their hands frantically. Alabasta. In front of the giant screen in the square. After seeing 2 such fantastic products in succession, Straw Hat Boy Luffy finally couldn't help but have stars in his eyes. Awesome. Luo Qi is awesome. I thought that submarine was so cool when I first saw it. I didn't expect there are supercars running on land now. He shouted excitedly. Immediately attracted the attention of Ace and Smoker, who were not far away. Straw Hat Kid. Luffy. The 2 voices that sounded at the same time also made the Straw Hat Kid see Ace and Smoker. He first saw Ace's great joy, and then saw Smoker's frightened expression. Then he ran out. Luo Qi crossed his arms over his chest and looked at everyone with a smile. After the camera stopped, he walked to the stage and began to introduce himself. These are the third items of this trade fair. As we all know, this world is made up of 4 oceans, the Great Root, and the New World. With the pirate king Gul D. Rogers' last words before his death aroused the enthusiasm of countless people to pursue the treasure of One Piece, and countless people rushed into the sea. But, don't forget, in addition to the ocean, this world is still made up of countless islands. We were born on land, live on land, and the food we eat, the clothes we wear, and the houses we live in are all on land. Even if it rushes into the sea, it will eventually return to land. So, compared to using ships to sail on the sea, what kind of transportation do we use on land? Bicycles, horses, wild animals, camels, other animals that can be ridden, or walking on our own 2 feet. Without exception, any of the above means of transportation are extremely uncomfortable. Therefore, Rashomon Chamber of Commerce is committed to providing a more comfortable transportation environment for the residents of this world and has specially launched this series of models. Safety, reliability, comfort and multifunctionality are the best descriptions of them. As long as there is sunlight, energy can be replenished automatically. First of all, this 2-seater luxury sports car has a handsome shape and a compact structure, and is specially launched for the wealthy people in this world. Saying this, Luo Qi stepped aside, touched his forehead with his right hand, and then waved his hand and pointed to the curtain of the stage. The screen immediately played on the curtain. The function introduction, driving screen and intimate design of each car are all displayed on the giant screen, just like the modern 21st century car advertisements. Luo Qi stood in a corner, looking at this familiar and long unseen advertisement, and couldn't help feeling a little emotional. At the same time, he was also very glad that he bought the material fruit. In the end, Luo Qi gave this fruit to Aisha, and under the effect of the perfect version of the devil fruit optimization liquid, it achieved a qualitative leap. Superman. Materialization fruit. Touch your forehead with your finger, and any object or image you imagine in your mind will appear perfectly and realistically. No curse. The potential of this Superman devil fruit is fully stimulated. For example, the weapons, cars, stages, and giant screens at this trade fair are all projected with the power of this fruit. Of course, there are also disadvantages. This materialized item can only last for 24 hours, and it will automatically disappear after the time limit. But even so, when this devil fruit is in Luo Qi's hands, its value can be fully utilized. Thanks for watching.